Okay, this is percent word problems. Here is a word problem. Challenger Elementary School has 800 students. Every Wednesday, 12% of the students stay after school for chess club. How many students attend chess club on Wednesdays? Now, when we do a percent word problem, we are doing proportions. There's two ways to think about proportions. One is we can do scale factor. Scale factor to solve it, or we could do the proportional method. This one is easier to do when we can do it. This one's harder, but it works every time. You need to know how to do both. So here's scale factor. This is the way that most of the Khan assignments and the hints will go. It just looks a little bit differently. Now, if we have here, Challenger Elementary School has 800 students. Every Wednesday, 12% of the students stay after school for chess club. How many students attend chess club on Wednesdays? The question is asking how many students attend chess club on Wednesday. It's not a percent. We have here a percent, 12%. We're going to write 12% out of 100. I got that because every percent is over 100 when we put it as a fraction form. 12% is in regards to students that stay after school for chess club. So I'm just going to put here, labeling it chess club. These are the students that go to chess club. And this percent would be all the students. We have here 800 students. These are all the students in this school. So we have here our part to whole. Part of the students go to chess club, and all the students we have are part of Challenger Elementary School. Now we're going to create a proportion. A proportion has two parts to it. It looks like two fractions. We have here our first. We're going to put our second one. Now what's labeled here, we're going to label from chess club to chess club. And we have here all the students. We're going to label this as all the students. And we have here that Challenger Elementary School has a total of 800 students. We're going to put it right here. And we have here an unknown amount of chess club. This is our variable, an unknown number. Now we're going to do scale factor here. To go from 100 to 800, I can multiply it by 8. Now if I do it in the denominator, I also have to do the numerator. We're going to multiply this by 8. 12 times 8, if I do it on the side, 12 times 8, this is 16. I carry 1 over. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 96. Our x is 96. This is 96 of the students attend chess club, and that's my answer. This is the way that Khan does it. They do it vertically, but essentially they use scale factor. The problem with this is that this only works most part of the time when it multiplies or divides evenly. I'm going to also show the proportional method. It works the same way. Whenever we have a percent, we're going to put it over 100. 12 over 100. We got here 12 is the percent that of students that go to chess club. And we have here 100% of students in the whole school. All the students over here. All the students. Now if we label this, we're going to label it across chess club to chess club. And over here, all the students to all the students. This relationship matches up with all the percents. These match up with all the actual figures. All the students, we know there are 800. 800 students. We're going to put it over here on the bottom. And we have your X amount of chess club. That's what we're trying to figure out. Now, before we did scale factor, we multiplied it by 8 to go across. But over here, we're going to now cross multiply. That's going to be our first step. And we have here 12 times 800. This is cross multiplying. We will be multiplying. So we have here 12 times 800. Now, progressively, we will stop seeing the x for multiplying because x can be used as a variable. So we have your 12 times 800 is equal to, and on the other side, 100 times a number unknown, 100 times x. Okay, this is 100 times a number x. 12 times 800, now there's a shortcut. We could multiply 800 times 12. There's a shortcut. If we have here numbers whole numbers that have multiple zeros in it. We can count it, 1, 2, 2 zeros. And 12 times 8, if we don't know, we just do it on the side, 12 times 8. This is 16. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 96. I have here 9,600 or 9,600. I'm going to bring everything down, equals 100x. Now, what's going on here is that we are multiplying 100 times x. We are going to get x by itself because we're trying to figure out what is x. We are going to do the inverse of whatever operation is going on here. If we're multiplying, we're dividing. We're going to do 100 divided by 100. It cancels out. We're going to do it on the other side. A little shortcut here. If we have here a pair of zeros, we can cancel it out. It's like dividing this by 10, the numerator and denominator by 10. We're also going to do it over here. 96 divided by 1 is 96. And what am I left over with here? I'm going to bring that down. 96 is equal to x. X stands for the number of students that attended chess club. We did this in two different ways. One is through scale factor, which was this example. This is the example that Khan uses. I like to, when I'm showing this with students, I like to show this as scale factor. Ezekiel, sorry, we don't have class right now. Your next period, right?
I think they said this is fifth period, right?
Nope, this is sixth.
What's fifth?
I don't know. Look at your schedule.
609. What's 609?
609 is that way.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry about that. So we did scale factor on the top where we multiplied it by 8. And this was the proportional method. You do have to know it both ways. The hints go with scale factor. They'll do this. They won't set it up like equal with two fractions. They'll just do it vertically, but it's the same thing. They just multiplied it by 8. Okay? I would try to keep it like this because this is the way that we're going to keep things uniform for the upper grades when your child or if you're the student going into 7th grade next year. This is the first problem. Let's try another problem. That was percent word problems for Challenger Elementary School. Let's try the next one, percent word problems. We have here, of the 50 U.S. states, 4 have names that started with the letter W. What percentage of the U.S. states have names that start with the letter W? Again, we'll solve it two different ways. The first way, we'll do scale factor. And the other way we'll solve it is the proportional method. You do have to know it both ways. The proportional method is the cross multiplying. The scale factor is either multiplying or dividing down. Let's look at this problem. Let's set this up. We have here, of the 50 U.S. states, 4 have names that start with the letter W. What percentage of U.S. states have names that start with the letter W? We don't know what percent this is. Now, whenever we're talking about a percent, when we did equivalent fractions, a percent is always going to be something over 100. So we don't know the percent, so we're going to have your x over 100. An unknown percent over what we know always is going to be 100. This is standing for the percentage of U.S. states that have names that start with the letter W. What does it stand for? States that start with W. The percent of states that have W. Over here on this side, this is going to have percent of all the states. When we're talking about 100%, we're talking about all of these states. There are 4 that have W, but we're talking about all of the states, 100%. We're going to create a proportion. This is states that have W, states that have W. Over here we have all the states. We know there are 50 U.S. states. If we labeled it correctly, all the states, this standing for the percent, this standing for the amount of states that we have in total. We put here 50, and we know that in these details, 4 have names that start with the letter W. This is the amount, the percent that's going to be in regards to states that have W, but we know that there are 4 of them that have W. Scale factor over here, if you look, 50, to go from 50 to 100, we're going in this direction. 50 times 2 will give me 100. 4 times 2 will give me 8. This is 8 what? Percent of states that have W. 8% of states that have W. If we are doing the proportional method, it should follow the same way. We didn't know the percentage. Whatever percentage we have, we're going to put it over 100. X over 100 equals, now over here, we know X is going to be the states that start with the letter W, percent of states with W. And over here, we're going to have the percent of all the states. Now, we're going to label this states that have W, states that have W. And over here, we're going to have all the states. Labeling it and setting it up is exactly the same. If you use the con hints, it looks like this, but it's just vertically. But they use a lot of scale factor for these. They work it out pretty easily. The benefit of scale factor, again, is it's easier to do, but it won't work all the way. Particularly when we get into decimals. For example, if this was 33, there's nothing that we can multiply 33 to get to 100. So some of these will not work when we're doing scale factor. Let's go over here. Proportion method, it's a little bit more work, but it works all the time. You do have to know both. We have here 100. We have here 50 states. We got that. If you didn't know how many states there were, it was right here. There are 50 states. How many of them start with the letter W? We have here 4 states. This is exactly identical to one another. At this point, it changes. When we're talking about the proportional method, we're talking about cross-multiplying. And we have here, we're going to be multiplying the parts that are connected to one another. We have here x times x, a number that we don't know, times 50. Instead of writing x 50, we're going to write 50x. This is called our coefficient. It's the number in front of a variable. This number will always be in front. This just means 50 times a number that we don't know. We don't know what this number is, the percent of states that start with W. This is going to be equal to, again, we're cross-multiplying 100 times 4. We're going to write that. We're going to solve what we can and bring everything else down horizontally. So we don't know what 50 times x is, but we do know 100 times 4. And if you didn't know what that is, you could count the 2 zeros, 1, 2. This only works for whole numbers. 1 times 4 is 4. We have your 400 equals 50x. Now, we said that we need to get x by itself. We need to do the inverse. This is 50 times a number x. What is the inverse of multiplying? Or its opposite? We divide. We divide the 50, we have to do it on the other side. Now a little tip, if we have here zeros in the numerator and denominator, we can cancel out those sets. It's like dividing 400 divided by 10 and 50 divided by 10. If we're simplifying, we're left with 40 divided by 5. Now 40 divided by 5, if I divide this out, gives me 8. And what does 8 stand for? X. What does X stand for? We wrote over here, the percent of states that start with W. This should line up with this. Scale factor and proportional method. This is the way that Khan will give their hints, but vertically. And over here is the proportional method. This is on top of what they have to know. Okay, thank you. Let me know if you have any other questions.